Hey everyone, welcome to Gallagher's Grub. I'm Brian Gallagher, and today I'm super excited because I'm going to be smoking some St. Louis cut spare ribs. My first long cook on the Kamado Joe, being that I've only owned the grill for about a week. So I'm really excited about this today, and I'm getting a bit of a late start, so it's going to be pretty much completely dark out by the time these are done. So my first St. Louis cut spare ribs on the Kamado Joe. Stick around. All right, here we have a rack of St. Louis cut spare ribs. And the first thing I'm going to do is worm a paring knife under the membrane and then take a paper towel and remove that membrane from the back side of the ribs. And this is going to help the rub penetrate the ribs and alleviate some of the toughness from that membrane. Next thing we're going to do is hit these ribs with some rub. Get it all over, front, back, top, bottom, sides, everywhere. Anywhere you see meat or fat, you want to have a little bit of rub for flavor. And in case you're wondering, I'm using McCormick Grill Mates barbecue rub that you can find pretty much anywhere. So over the past couple of weeks that I've owned the Kamado Joe, I've been finding that the easiest way to light a fire is to use a small chimney, place your charcoal into the charcoal basket. To get some smoke flavor, we're going to add a couple of chunks of wood, and I've got one chunk of hickory and one chunk of peach. And we're going to bury this wood a little bit. It doesn't have to be totally buried, but it'll help it smolder and smoke. Then once our small chimney is lit, we're going to pour that into one side of the charcoal basket. Then during the course of our cook, that fire will spread out to all the other charcoal in the basket. And then we'll close the lid, and we'll crank this top vent wide open, and we'll crank the lower vent wide open as well. And then once we're getting within about 30 degrees of our ideal temperature, we're going to shut these vents down quite a bit, not all the way. And now we're going to start adding all of our racks. Alright, I'm going to do this in fast motion because there's quite a few racks to add here. We've got our slow roller, and that's in a couple of pieces. And then we've got this rack, and then this rack that goes on that rack. And then our deflector shields go onto that rack. And then finally, we have our grates, and those are in two pieces. Close the lid, let it heat up for a minute, and then we're going to scrape these grates down so they're nice and clean. And finally, we're ready to add our St. Louis ribs right to the middle of the grill. And I'm going to place this temperature probe on the grates here, and that way I can monitor the temperature inside the grill, not just using the thermometer built into the lid, but also on this external digital thermometer as well. And we'll close the lid and get this cook underway. Okay, we're like an hour into this cook now. You can see I'm at 264 degrees. You can see where the vents are. Top one's at about 1 notch, and the bottom one's about the width of a finger. And we're gonna go ahead and check on our ribs. You see that nice smoke coming up from the wood. And to help keep the ribs from drying out, we're going to spritz them with a mixture of apple cider vinegar, apple juice, and water. And then we'll close the lid, keep on grilling. And now we're about 2 hours into the cook, and we're going to spritz them again. So every hour, on the hour pretty much, we're going to spritz these ribs. And now we're about 3 hours into the cook, and you can see we're holding steady, 266, 267. Top vent is right about at the first notch, and the bottom vent still open, almost a finger width, maybe like a pinky width. And yeah, the lid thermometer seems to be very accurate. So looking good. And now we're about 5 hours into the cook. It's gotten dark out. And I'm gonna take my tongs and see how these feel. You can see how they bend. They're kind of breaking that crust on the top. To me, that means these are ready to get sauced. They're gonna be nice and tender. We're just gonna use a grill brush and just paint that sauce on. Painting a masterpiece here. A masterpiece of pork. And for sauce, I'm using a store-bought sauce that I added some vinegar to. I like it a little bit loose. A lot of those store-bought sauces are pretty thick. I like my sauce nice and loose and with a good bit of tang, so I like that vinegar in there. And I don't like to go super heavy with the sauce either. And now we're going to close the lid and let this cook for another 20 to 30 minutes just to let that sauce tack up, and then we'll be ready to pull the ribs off the grill. And just like that, our ribs are finished. They've been on for a total of about 5.5 hours, and I have to say it was a really easy cook in the Kamado Joe Classic Joe 3, and I already know these ribs are going to be delicious. And here they are. They've been sitting for a few minutes. My first St. Louis ribs on the Kamado Joe. And you can see a nice smoke ring on these. You'll have to excuse me for eating in front of you. I have to give these a taste. And look how nicely that meat comes off the bone. These are some tasty ribs. And right now I'm just very happy with the results that I'm getting off the new Kamado Joe. So that was my first ribs. That was last night on the Kamado Joe. And man, they were fantastic. The Kamado Joe is a lot of fun to use. There's actually like a lot of like grates and stuff. There's a slow roller, and then that's in 3 pieces, and then there's the heat deflectors, and then the grates themselves are 2 pieces. So there's a lot to play with, and it's kind of fun. And you can really just dial in that temperature with just a couple taps of the top vent and the lower vent. Like I was running between 250 275 degrees Fahrenheit the entire time with almost no hassle whatsoever. It was 5 hours, that cook. So the ribs came out great. My first ribs on the Kamado Joe. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on ribs and the Kamado Joe. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when new videos come out. And of course, keep on grilling.